Recently on CBC Metro Morning, I talked about workplace flexibility. There's been some big headlines lately that Dell has told workers that if they want to work remotely, they will be not eligible for promotions. And furthermore, they will not be able to change jobs. These headlines are screaming out at us right now. Bank of America apparently sent employees what they call letters of education. It gave them 2 weeks to respond. And these letters of education were specifically how the rules of flexible work at Bank of America would apply. You're seeing it all over the place. Germany, Deutsche Bank has required their senior leadership to come back to the office, and therefore the rank and file. So if you're somebody who's benefited from flexible work, whether you're a parent of young children, you're the child of aging parents, you've got a long commute, perhaps the office culture is detrimental to your well-being and your mental health, should you be frightened about all these pronouncements? And statistically, it actually isn't true. These are the headlines we're hearing. But the Flex report has shown us that in the last year, workplace flexibility has actually increased. And organizations are moving to this era of boundarylessness, boundaryless workplaces. In fact, the math shows that we're now under 40% of companies that are not providing flexible workplaces, flexible work structures, whether they be structural flexible, where you're told when to come in, or they're fully flexible where you decide, or there's some sort of amorphous flexibility where you have a requirement of hours or days, but you get to pick. But that number of organizations not offering flexibility has dropped dramatically. The number of organizations demanding people be in a certain number of days has dropped dramatically. This Flex report done with BCG looked at 7,500 companies across North America. So I would suggest, well, I'm no data scientist or researcher. That feels like a big sample size to me and not just a fluke or anomaly. Now, I'm a person who, pandemic hit, go, oh crap, then I can't wait to get everybody back in the office. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I want everybody back. I want the culture back. Well, I might like to go to the office, and I will continue to go to the office. In fact, I'm headed to the office right now, and it's a Saturday, but that's what works for me. My children are grown. I like routine. I'm a big fan of the divide between church and state, in my case, home and work. I like my setup at work. I don't actually have a laptop. But for a lot of people, that doesn't work. And organizations are realizing that the productivity paranoia, which is a term to use for leaders who think that flexible workplaces are less productive, is actually false. And in fact, most people working, most team members recognize that their productivity can be at its best when they're afforded the opportunity to put other things into their lives and not just work. In fact, a University of Chicago study demonstrated that people who saved 72 minutes in their commute actually applied 40% of that back to their work. So in an ironic way, and hopefully we won't get back to that pandemic level where everybody was working all the time, but ironically, by having some flex in their work time, people in Chicago are actually working more. And maybe that's you. Maybe that's how you feel. Or maybe because you're not interrupted and constantly in meetings, you feel like your output's higher. Or maybe because you know that you can take your dog to the groomer um, have an opportunity to, have that plumber come in the middle of the day, have that opportunity to maybe even just in the middle of your day, scooch over to your couch, have a tea, read for a minute, ponder the world. These are the options that are available to us for workplace flexibility. Geography is also important. Back to the Dell situation, you've got people who are complaining who live miles and miles, hours literally, from the office because Dell announced, hey, we're going to go fully remote in the pandemic hit. And people moved, and they moved to places that were more affordable. They moved to places that afforded them a better lifestyle. They moved to places that gave them that opportunity to maybe care for those family members or just be closer to family members. Maybe in a case of a couple of partners, they chose the location to live where they were based on one partner's work. They had to sacrifice personal relationships. So the data is proving that flexible workplaces are probably here to stay. Now, I appreciate for those who've invested and built commercial enterprises, real estate and offices. And ironically, as office space, certainly in Toronto where I live, becomes more affordable, becomes more accessible, warehouse and logistics space does not. And I appreciate for those who invested and built their life's business on real estate. I think that obviously change is coming. And that requires no different than it has for many industries, many sectors, new thinking, new innovation. Yeah, it's come suddenly, it's come quickly in a business that obviously has long lead times, long development times, long tail investments. But how do you take that office space and turn it into in-person space? Is there an opportunity to build entertainment out of current office spaces? There's an opportunity to create hospitality. Is there an opportunity to create educational settings, innovation settings? Is there an opportunity to provide new forms of housing, whether it be long-term or short-term? Because we have this housing crisis. We have a living crisis. And it's kind of horrific to think about the fact that we can't find a place for people to live, but we can't find people to live in offices. So these changes, I think, they're here to stay. Whether you like them, whether you dislike them. You probably don't have an opportunity right now to turn this snowball around. But like any change in technology, any change in innovation, any historical milestone where we've seen the evolution, successful organizations will evolve. Landlords will evolve. Tenants will evolve. And tenants are evolving quickly. But I think the fundamental flaw that I held of demanding that people come back to work, and when I got upset when people said, "Oh, you need to earn my right to come back to work," is imagine the world had started this way. Imagine if work didn't require an office. I mean, think about the office. Is that just a continuation of how we lived our lives historically? You grow up, you're born in an institution like a hospital, and even though you immediately get taken home to an individual household, you start going to institutions en masse. Church, for example, preschool, movie theaters, places where we do things together. And eventually, we all went to school. We all went to class together. And I think we all know that we are human beings and we need connection. We need that physical contact. We need community. But after school, elementary school, we went to high school, and maybe from there, we went to a job, or to college, or to university. And in each of those cases, once again, we're amongst a large group of people. But why? Now, I understand it's hard to physically produce a car if you're not in the car plant. It's hard to build a building if you're not on the ladder or the scaffolding. It's hard to serve breakfast when you're not in the kitchen cooking. But offices? Really? Offices have just become a continuation of school. We all go together at the same time. We're told what time to check in. There's a boss who's the principal. There's some associate bosses who are the vice principals. There are some managers who are the teachers. And then the people down at the bottom who are the students who are being trained or taught and not always listened to. And I'll admit to being one of those principals. I'll admit to being one of those vice principals. I'll admit to being one of those teachers. But that's the thing. If when the office, the corporate culture that we live today, when it was first created hundreds of years ago, had actually been, no. You actually have a gathering place. You work from your local home or your local community center, or maybe there's a place of work where you gather with people who work for other organizations. And because we now have the technology to be connected yet distributed, that's where we're headed. And when we think about this word culture, which in the annals of DEI, we know that culture has become a camouflage for people like us. Culture has become a smokescreen for I want to watch what you're doing every day. Are you working hard? Culture has become just a four-letter word, to be honest with you. A four-letter word. We can build culture without chaining people to a desk 5 days a week. Yes, we can. We can build community. We can spur productivity. And these are words coming out of my mouth I would not have believed 2 years ago. But we can. And I think the starting place is to look at our organizations not as a culture, but as microcultures, to understand how they work, to understand who needs what, to understand how we can build these microcultures together and connect them, get together, and they become a bigger, stronger organism. I often hear companies talk about the desire of entrepreneurial units to have little, to push decision-making to the front lines, to have independent thinking and thought and action, and be like a bunch of startups. And we preach that, we put it into a presentation, and then we don't practice it. Because we bring everybody and put them together in the same type of office, with the same hours, with the same structures. It's not possible. You can't have one independent entrepreneurism if you're going to have these crazy microcultures. Yo, I just went on a red light. I had the green. This video could have ended quite abruptly, let me tell you. So that's where we're at. How do we prioritize human performance and the workplace and the structure and the boundarylessness? I'm not even sure if I'm saying this right. Is it boundaryless or boundarylessness? Or maybe it's both. But we have an opportunity. No, it's not even an opportunity. Leaders of organizations have to morph our businesses, have to change the direction they're going, have to recognize, yep, we sunk a lot of money into a big office, into leaseholds, into lease tenure, and that's not the employee's fault. You have an opportunity to not only drive performance up, to build microcultures that stick together, to actually get that entrepreneurism, that focus and that thrust that you talked about. You have that opportunity. At the same time, you can spend money more efficiently. You can change what you invest in to expenditures that are probably going to have longer lasting impact. Experiences, training, development, capacity building. So we're facing a shift that cannot be avoided. That shift presents massive, massive opportunity. And I say it's not optional because there is no going back. And even though we've had a little softening in the employment market, and there's been some layoffs happening, and maybe some employers are looking at the data going, company A, company B are letting people go. I'm gonna let my people go. No, not go. I'm gonna let my people know that if you wanna stay a part of this big protective mothership called HQ, SSHQ, SSH headquarters, you better obey and show up at the office like a good student. You're gonna lose your best people. You might not lose everybody, but who wants to take the risk of losing their A players? I don't. Who wants to take the risk of losing the people that can do the things that I can't do? Who wants to take the risk of that trap? Not me. Neither should you. So let's embrace this concept of the in-person culture. Let's share and innovate new ways on how to make it successful. Let's not be old man Harrison and begrudge the future. And yeah, I have to admit, on a very personal level, I miss the energy of coming in and knowing I'm going to see everybody in their spots. I miss the energy of the predictability. But at the same time, who am I kidding? I travel a lot for work. I'm always out and about at meetings. I mean, honestly, was I living in an office culture? Pre-pandemic? Absolutely not. Maybe I just got too used to that comfort of that desk, the comfort of that chair, the comfort of that structure during the pandemic. Because having something stable, having something solid helped me get through it mentally and emotionally. But now when I think about this opportunity we have, this in-person approach to life, this in-person culture, I think, wow, let's make the most of when I do get together with people. Let's make the most of when people are engaged. Let's shut off the computer, put away the phone I'm recording this thing on, and let's pay attention. Maybe even take off my sunglasses and say hello.